Hi, and welcome to Best in Tesla. So, Tesla's lead in getting to robotaxis at scale is probably much bigger than people realize because there are a lot more to it than just software. And if people think that when Tesla solves it, everybody else is just going to copy it, they are sadly mistaken. And a new blog post by Brian Wang explains what these factors are. And in today's video, I have the pleasure of speaking with Brian Wang, who is a co-founder, futurist thought leader, and a popular science blogger with 1 million readers per month. His blog, nextbigfuture.com, is ranked #1 science news blog. It covers many disruptive technologies and trends, including space, robotics, artificial intelligence, medicine, anti-aging biotechnology, and nanotechnology. And he has contributed with some chapters to my book, The Elon Musk Mission. So he knows a thing or two about the advancement of technology. So let's hear what he had to say about Tesla's lead in getting to robotaxis at scale. All right, welcome to Best in Tesla, Brian, and thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Great to join you, Lars.
The people that don't follow Brian, you should check out the Next Big Future.
That's right. Website and the YouTube channel. Yes.
Yes, this is your website here. I can just put it down here. Uh-huh. He has one of the most popular science blog out there with over 1 million viewers a month. So definitely go check him out, and he knows what he's talking about. But he had a new take on the whole full self-driving, or the robo-taxi actually fleet, and how much ahead Tesla is, as you write here in your title, that Tesla will get to robo-taxi at scale 5 to 10 years before the competition. But what is your thesis in this article, and why is it Tesla has this big lead?
So one of the things that people ignore is that all those other companies that are all using Lidar, they don't have much Lidar right now. There's only like 200,000 units of Lidar that were made in 2021 that were automotive grade, right? So there was and the number of Lidars that they need per car is not just one. I can't make 200,000 cars with 200,000 Lidar, right?
No. Yeah.
I need to have about 8 Lidar units per car. And oftentimes they're not all the same Lidar, like all the cheap solid state Lidar. They often have the big one on top, the 360-degree Lidar.
Yeah.
That costs $80,000. Maybe you can get one now for $40,000. They might be able to get that cost down to $10,000.
Is that still so expensive?
Yeah, the 360-degree Lidar is still so expensive, but they have one maybe, and the thing they would require an even deeper dive into Lidar than I have made, which I will eventually do. But it's to say, okay, there's some that they're getting down to 4,000. All the really cheap ones seem to be solid state, single line. So, but the fundamental thing is, if we're counting how many they need, and they need 8, let's say you can use all the cheap ones. Let's say they can use all cheap, but you need to have 8 of them, right? Then they need to get to at least 8 million Lidar to get 1 million robotaxis, right?
Yeah.
And that means Lidar that's not going to driver assist. If I have a driver assist system, an autopilot competitor.
Oh yeah,
right?
Of course, yeah.
That uses Lidar, I'm sucking that up and saying, like, I need my Lidar. I've already paid you guys for it. I need this Lidar for my autopilot competitor, my ADAS driving system, right? So the robotaxi guys have to get dedicated supply for a robotaxi. And there's, of course, dozens of companies, and there's 80 Lidar companies, right? So if I'm making all this Lidar, I'm probably only going to 1 or 2 suppliers. So not only must the overall supply of Lidar increase, but my supplier has to start making 8 million Lidars for me, for my company to get to 1 million robotaxis, right?
And in all of 2021, you said 200,000.
About 200,000, right? I've seen numbers between 100,000, but some say 200,000. So roughly that number. And then you can confirm this by looking at how many self-driving cars are on the road in different places. There's a bunch in California, there's a bunch in Phoenix, and there's some in China, right? But so the biggest numbers are maybe Waymo with 1,600, right? And then you go on down the line. So total is about like 5,000, maybe 10,000. Like if there's some, random company in China that's doing something, like the big one is the coming back by Geely and Baidu called Apollo. They have 500. They're the first one to take the driver out in China, and that only happened in August, right? In August, they have 500, and they say they have 257,000 self-driving miles, right? In the August, I'm not sure if it's a quarter or the month, but basically for the quarter, if with 500 cars, we're talking about 5 to 6 rides per day, right? 5 to 6 rides per day from 500 cars. So anyway, bottom line is about 10,000-ish, 5,000, 10,000-ish total self-driving car systems out there. Most still have the driver in. Only some of the leaders, Cruise, Waymo, Apollo, have taken the driver out, right? And we know from watching more closely the Waymo and Apollo that they took the driver out, but they're under limited conditions, right? Like Cruise can only operate at night. They had some problem where a bunch of them start blocking traffic. So they have issues operating that. There's not like, oh, we're super close, we're ready to start scaling up. We got a bunch of issues, and they've been growing very slowly. Yeah. Waymo, only started going from the Phoenix suburbs to Phoenix downtown, right? So you can look at these things and pace the growth. So anyway, we can go in that more detail before, but based on, everyone looks at miles per disengagement as if it's like, okay, that number, before I have to take over the human, that is the be all end all to track the progress. Oh, we want to get to 100,000, 1 million miles per disengagement, everything's solved. But the thing is, if I'm doing it in this narrow thing of like only in sunny Phoenix, only a certain time in San Francisco, only in a hyper map location, I haven't taken the training wheels off, right? I have not taken the training wheels off my thing, and I'm saying that I can do this stuff. So Apollo had the 5th best miles per disengagement. Argo AI had a fifth best. Argo just got shut down by Ford and Volkswagen. Yeah, Ford and Volkswagen. They spent like over $3 billion on them. They had over 2,000 employees. And they had, if you look at the videos, they had these nice videos showing their no human driver car driving around. Looks great. But then Ford pulled the plug and says, we're 5 years away from a commercial system that we're ready to take the human driver out, right? So that we're ready to go to level 4 with that thing at commercial scale, right? Yeah. So Ford yanked the plug and said, we're going to concentrate on level 2, autopilot kind of driver assist systems. So if the number 5 guy is over 5 years away, how far away are the other guys who are doing all the same thing, right? Yeah. And Tesla's not doing the same thing. So there's some key problems that I've identified looking in that of like how much LiDAR you have. Also, they also have to scale other components. They have to scale millimeter wave radar, and they have to scale the ultrasonics, because all these guys have loaded up their cars to the gills with these things. They brag about it. Look, our Apollo GT, RT, whatever, has 8 LiDAR, and we got 12 ultrasonics, and we got like 12 million. But then when I'm going to get to 1 million cars, why do I say 1 million cars? Because Uber has 3 million drivers, right? Uber has 3 million drivers. And if I'm going to replace that with Robotaxi, one Robotaxi does not magically start driving all around. I need to have at least 1 million Robotaxis, because 1, they have to be in different cities. And then 2 is that the, like, yes, I've taken the human driver, I can run it 24/7. But the thing is, people aren't up 24/7. There is a lot less business at night. Yeah. So, once they get, between, midnight and 8, there is business. There's the guys who's getting off from the bar drunk and wants to go or whatever. But, we're looking at I'm thinking about 2.5 times the productivity max
Yeah.
for a robotaxi. People talk about 5x. I think it's 2, maybe 3 times, because
Okay.
also you have to get the freaking business. It's not like just because I can do it, I have the capacity. Just like we have the capacity to make X million cars and whatever, I may only make X million cars, a smaller number, because the capacity is not fully utilized.
Yeah.
Anyway, so and that 1 million car thing, that's where I talk about Robotaxi at scale,
Yeah.
right? Because I basically talk in terms of units of Uber.
Yeah.
Because you can talk about ARC, talk about we're going to get to 1 trillion miles, $1 per thing, out in wherever distant land, and we're going to blow past Uber and Lyft. So one, we have to get to Uber and Lyft level.
Yeah.
And then two, when they say we're going to get to 1 trillion miles of business from Robotaxi by cutting it down to $1, right? By taking out the human driver, right? It doesn't happen like that, right? Because Uber came out with lower prices than taxis in order to gain business. Now it's kind of like a mix of at taxi prices or a little bit less depending on city. But it took, if you look at the growth of Uber, they did a bunch of nothing for a few years, and then suddenly they took and got business. That 3 or 4 years where they had the hyper growth, right? Like in New York or something like that. And one, they didn't fully kill all the taxis in New York, but it's had that point where it's like 3 or 4 years where we're really doing a lot of growth, right? Same thing. You have to win the business. It's just because I'm offering something as I can go half the price, right? You still have to win the business, because people have to say, do I trust going into the car with no driver? I don't know, because they're giving away for free in Arizona, where it's like Waymo's not charging yet, right?
Oh,
Or they
okay.
maybe just started charging, right? Often they start off first, it's free, right? So they have to get people converted over.
Yeah.
So I don't think they dominate the rides in Arizona. Like everyone's going the Waymo free stuff, right? Just because it's free, right?
Yeah.
So there is lags in all these things. So there's lags in the getting all the hardware. There's lags in building the systems. Even when I make 1 million robotaxis, 10,000 per city or whatever, and get them out there, there's an adoption lag. So there's many lags along the way to get to robotaxis at scale. Why is Tesla ahead? Tesla has all their cars, all 3.5 million cars, with the self-driving hardware in them, because Elon made the decision back in 2017 to include it. And they already have autopilot sales at a very high level. I don't think we have the full attachment rate of people who bought it, but it's a big number. Millions of people have it. I think at least over 1 million using the autopilot. And we have over, I think, probably 500,000 people who have paid for FSD. Again, we don't get that number either, but we know 160,000 people are on beta in North America.
Yeah.
I'm thinking most of the sales were in North America, but Elon talked about getting 1 million people onto FSD. So that's at scale. So, and also Tesla's making money on both those things in the current state of partial, not robotaxi level systems. So, so then also getting to scale, one is all the other guys have to get there without going broke, which is not a non-trivial thing, right?
Yeah.
You have Argo that went under. You have other guys going under, and also we know the end state will have 6 max, 3 in the non-China area, 3 in China, and probably 2 big winners, right? So the 30 have to get down to 4, right? Even if it works, it'll go down to something like 4. But then all these guys who have a business plan which says, I must all make my money only on full driverless robotaxi rides. Well, that means I must get to say, and I'm going to sell it at $1 a mile because I'm going to undercut Uber. That means if my burn rate is $20 billion per year, I must get to 20 billion miles. If those 1 million cars have to get 20 billion miles, I'm driving 20,000 miles per robotaxi to get to 20 billion miles. I can get to 60,000 miles maybe per robotaxi. It'd be 60 billion miles. So I still need about 300,000 robotaxis, and they have to be like fully operating. Everyone's using them to the max, where they're like driving around, not getting 5 rides per day, for a few miles in a small zone. I have to be like driving all over, fully utilized. So that is something else where we can track things more closely with the miles driven and the paid miles and the areas. Because basically, if we know that they have to get to that 60 billion miles, 20 billion miles, in that range to be anywhere near Uber in the current state, if Uber doesn't grow. And if you dial it back to 6 billion miles, which they said that was what was needed for full scale authorization to prove to the regulator that can do something, 6 billion miles, you have to have 100,000 vehicles operating, really running, rides up the wazoo in order to get that thing. So it's the growth that they're talking about is definitely looking like that they're not going to have the hardware by 2030. It's a big question. There's the hope that they can do it. Like Jaidu is talking about going to make 800,000 cars, robotaxi cars per year by 2028. So they're talking big, but they're backed by Baidu, which has $4 billion a quarter, I think, maybe of revenue of net income, and then Geely, which made about 1 million cars, but really inexpensive cars. But they do own Volvo, which makes about 600,000, 700,000 cars. So actually, they only have like 10% of Volvo. They only have a piece of it, right? I don't think they own the whole thing. So anyway, so there's these guys who are talking big, but then only have 500 cars now, and they only have 250,000 miles. Well, Tesla has 10 million miles, and now they've got version 11, which replaces the autopilot highway with using the FSD for highway. So now the miles that Tesla is using will really rack up, because now the highway miles that were counted as autopilot are now counted as FSD, right? Because they're driving the same software is doing the same thing. So those are, I went over that quickly. So that's kind of the summary of it, that there's these big points beyond just getting it to work, to growing it profitably, and then winning. There's a middle game there before you get to, and I dominate everything.
Yeah. And you also talk about robotaxis that cost about $50,000. I guess that's if you take the cheap Lidar. If you say a big spinning Lidar on the top costs $40,000 or something like that. So
right. Yeah,
or you think they can get a robotaxi down to $50,000?
The Chinese guys, Apollo, that I was talking about, they say they have this $37,000 cheap car, which had 32 things. So it can be done in terms of like having the hardware. Does the software all work? Open question. Is that the same as these other guys who have the spinning 360 Lidar? I don't know. I'm not.
But also like comparison to Tesla, if they in 2 years' time is going to start production of their next model that is half the price of the $36,000 we know they can build a car for today, that's $18,000 compared to maybe $50,000 or $35,000. They still have price from the competition that Tesla can actually produce their full self-driving cars. And as you just said, when they solve it, they can turn on 3 million full self-driving cars around the world that want to pay suddenly for that full self-driving capability in their car they own right now. So that's going to be a huge revenue growth for Tesla to make this happen, where all the others have to build and pay for these $50,000 robo-taxis and scale that up from something from zero, actually.
And their costs could easily, so collectively, all these companies, dozen of companies, have supposedly already spent $100 billion, right? But the thing is, if I'm one of the winners, I get the prize of spending another $100 billion before I may get to profitability, if my thing is dependent upon only robotaxi working, right? Because if I get my cost down to $50,000, $40,000 for my robotaxi with all the sensors. If I need 1 million of them, I gotta, ante up another $50 billion just for the vehicles. Maybe I also need operational staff. I need other things to make this all work, not just the vehicles, right?
Yeah.
I need to,
But that's just
have
the
guys.
vehicle.
That's just a vehicle. So easily could double that up to $100 billion. But presumably you can, if I'm poker,
Start earning some. Yeah.
I have my $10 billion, $5 billion ante, and then each year I maybe, another, 10 billion, 20 billion to the pot to stack up to over 5 years to 100 billion. But it's still, I have to have the resources to double up my bet from a non-trivial $5 billion to 10 billion to 20 billion. And presumably I'm going to be making some money where the revenue from the Robotaxi I have, if that's not over $1 billion, $2 billion per year, where I still be losing money when I add in $10 billion, right? Then if it's still down in the millions, who's going to make that bet? Who's going to say, oh yeah, you're only driving a few thousand cars and we haven't even driven 1 million miles yet and got payment for them. I'm making $1 million off of this a year. Yeah. I'm going to say, here, another 20 billion. Who's doing that? And then also, if I'm making those big bets, the other guys in the chain, the LiDAR guys, I probably spend $2 billion, $5 billion, $10 billion to make the LiDAR factories and the millimeter wave radar factories. Yeah. Who's broken ground on those big factories? Who said, yeah, I'm going to make 20 million auto grade LiDAR in 2025, right? Yeah. I haven't seen the announcement of it. There's been some industrial industry analysis reports saying, oh yeah, we're going to go from here 100,000, and they have this little nice straight up thing going to 100 million units of LiDAR, in X years, right? But you can draw that on a graph, but where's the people who say, I as Geely, Apollo, Waymo are committing the purchases so that you, the LiDAR company, can build all that LiDAR, right? Yeah. And also all the other components. So this is similar to the supply chain problem where the auto guys didn't order up all the batteries, didn't order up enough semiconductor chips, right? That's where they had 10, 20% down. And then this is like, they have to make the orders so that the other guys can make this 100x, 1000x bet to supply all this stuff.
And I don't think that many are willing to make that bet, saying, okay, just like Tesla did with the batteries, like we will buy any battery you can give us. Like the ones that want to bet on full self-driving, get to 1 million robo-taxis, they kind of have to go out and say to these guys that make LiDAR, we will buy, 8 million LiDAR systems for you. Start building your factories now, and in 5 years we will buy them all from you because we have solved full self-driving at that point. Right. I don't think many other than Tesla is that confident in their own software.
Right. And why would you have the confidence if one, you didn't even know that that's the LiDAR you're going to use? If the one they have right now, I'm still testing it, still trying to do stuff. And then unlike Tesla, which doesn't have these sensors, just have the cameras, and with the question of, is hardware 3 or hardware 4 good enough? They have a question of, do all of these components work right? Is this one I'm going to lock in on? Because I'm not going to start copy pasting this all over until I've said, and this works. Because I can't say I will buy that unit if I don't know that's the thing I'm going to use. And then if I'm buying some future unit, I have to know I can switch it out. Because right now, all the other auto guys, they have a huge problem switching out any component, right? Yeah. To say, okay, I'm going to switch out this thing for that thing. And now you're saying my most advanced thing, my self-driving thing, I have built it flexible enough where I can pop in, pop out the components to make this thing work. Tesla can say, okay, we're going to drop ultrasonics. And then they do it, and they retrain their neural nets in 3 months, 6 months. The other guys are saying, has the hardware on a Waymo or any of the other guys, is it changed? They all still look the same. It doesn't look like they're doing this huge innovation to swap things in and out. So, but maybe they get it working at the expensive level, which means I have to make the $10,000, the $20,000 LiDAR on top of an EV all work and have the software, and I'm going to make 1 million units of that just to get the Uber scale. If I want to get 10 times Uber scale, I got to have 10 times above that. So there's a lot of scaling that has to happen with this stuff, and I don't think logically that, and I'm looking at them, before they have the confidence to make the bets. They say, okay, when are you actually getting to 10,000 cars deployed, robocar cars deployed over a few cities, and when are you over 1 billion miles? Because 10,000 cars, 20,000 cars should be able to get to 1 billion miles. If I'm driving at 50,000 miles, so they need to get to that 1 billion mile level.
Yeah.
Tesla had that with autopilot, where they have, over 1 billion miles per car, and the other guys are doing ADAS too. But then if that software is the same as FSD, then they'll go from the FSD going from 10 million miles per quarter up to 30 million just with version 11, because now we have highway miles, 40 million miles. And then Tesla still need to get the usage up too, because 160,000 people using it at a high level should be at least 250, 300 million miles. Fully utilized would be at 500 million miles. So Tesla also has to get to higher number of miles per quarter with their adoption. So that's something we can track Tesla with too. Is this really going up, right, to that level? Because if I'm on the verge of robotaxi, FSD usage, people should be super comfortable with it. There could be some still them not adopting it because they're, the wife is nervous, doesn't want to do it, will never do it, whatever, right? So then you may not get to 100% miles, but you should get to 30 to 50, above the 5 to 10% that we're at now, right? Yeah. Once we get to with highway driving. So there's these new metrics, more attention to those metrics of like, what are we getting to really high utilization for FSD as well? So you can see it for the non-Tesla guys, and you can also see it for Tesla to see, are we getting there?
Yeah, and just the scaling up of the robotaxi fleet is going to be a big task, I think. We can see how much the legacy automakers are struggling right now just to scale up their EVs. There's Ford and GM is not at 100,000 EVs yet, even though they have been talking big for 5 years. And if they suddenly want to create 1 million robotaxis, well, and they are struggling with getting semiconductors and batteries and raw materials and all that, and they have to scale up to 1 million robotaxis. I think this is going to be very, very difficult, and I don't really see them doing it this decade at any time or any scale.
Right. Yeah. When I say 5 to 10 years, I'm steel manning. I'm the theory of I'm going to assume that my competitors are as strong as possible. So I'm steel manning them to get them to 5 to 10 years. I'm saying that they're suddenly operating really great, that they're building their, start scaling up right away, that their systems are close, right? Yeah. I'm assuming that to get to 5, 10 years. Yeah. If they're as weak as they think they are, then they don't even do it. Like the Waymo talked about, where they're going to do a deal with Volkswagen. They're going to make a new dedicated robotaxi vehicle. There's some little pictures of it. It looks great in rendering. Yeah. And then they say they get $2 billion in this factory, but then the Volkswagen CEO, I think, looking to the new one, looking to cut costs. He was talking 2026 to have this factory built, and now he may be pushing off to 2030, right? So their big plans, in this hard economic environment are slipping, right? Yeah. So then for those companies depending upon a plant that's not been built yet, right? Yeah. Depending upon LiDAR that has a factory that's not been built yet, that depends upon this that has, it's like there's a lot of things that have to happen. And so if they don't make the factory 2030, then how can they have the vehicles that come out of that factory until 2035, right? Because again, the plant has to scale up. So but my thinking is that if anything is going by 2030, if Tesla gets to 2024, 2025 and has it working then it's who's alive to hang in there to compete. If I'm 5 years behind, how can you be?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but
No,
but But also, if you start in let's say they do it in 2024 and start production, and then they get them on the street in 2025. But we know Tesla's production is pretty good.
Right.
They
Right.
got almost to 500,000 on the second year of the Shanghai factory. So they could pretty quickly, in a couple of years, get to that million vehicles produced.
Right.
And then all the competition can see that Tesla is already pumping out millions of robotaxis every single year, and they are not even close yet, and they don't even have a factory to build the damn thing in.
Yeah.
I think many will simply just look at it and say,
Yeah.
"That's
Then they're
yeah,"
dead.
and we have to build these lidar factories, and we have to scale up to 1 million robotaxis, and we have to invest $50 billion to do that,
Mm.
and Tesla's already doing it. Tesla's already won. They're going to be
Right.
the biggest. So
Right.
yeah,
My analysis also, I think that the Tesla network, where they get the customers to kind of like Airbnb participate in it, I think that is a bigger part of it. That basically, like, even if they eventually make their millions of robotaxis and then have their own network, right?
yeah,
Why wouldn't, if I have customers who have vehicles, and let's say by 2025 there's 10 million of them or 20 million of them, then and a bunch of them bought FSD, so like say 3 million, right? Then why wouldn't I say, okay, the system rolls out, you can lend your FSD enabled car into this system and make money off of it, and then we take half of it, but you make half, and then it's a good return on you. Because you want to get to scale. I want to get to Uber scale, ideally where I have 3 million cars roaming around, where basically
mm,
I fill up every city, right? So that if I do that faster, I do that 3 years faster than building dedicated robotaxis. Why don't I do it? And also, even when I have a large system, not every city, not every place will have a full demand thing where my robotaxi is fully utilized. I want my 100% utilized robotaxi, but then I want the 50% utilized, part-time utilized people lending me their cars. I get half the money, but I'm not spending on a resource that will only be partially utilized, because there's also the demand. If the demand's not there, I would want, some um, uh, Tesla customer-owned vehicles to fill that part. 'Cause I want the long tail of the curve to
yeah,
be filled out by all these FSD people, right? And one, I can then know for sure, if I make 100,000 robotaxis, I can pop it in here, and I know that they're going to be used because they're already being used by my other customers, right?
yeah.
And also, I can what else? I can from the market. So this market information confirmation will be there, and also that the whole network is getting stronger because I'm there sooner and I have more of it. Because a robotaxi that I call that's not available is still not going to take me anywhere. So I need to have the availability.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I see that being more important. Like people who are thinking, oh, they only have their own robotaxis. I think that's wrong. I think that they will use the customers more because it makes too much sense for them not to do it. And also, they don't have to commit the money. They have to I don't have to, because even for Tesla, even if it's a $25,000 robotaxi, it still costs them $25 billion to make it.
Yeah.
And it's like, if I'm following the Uber thing of like you bring your own car, that is an easier way to lower risk way to make it a more profitable
Yeah,
early stage.
they could
Yeah.
quickly kind of copy the Uber deal
Yeah,
just without any drivers in there,
that's right.
and they could do that very quickly.
And they can also partner with Uber. Like they don't
Yeah.
have to have the whole pie. Why do I have
Mm.
to have the whole pie if I can just grow it all bigger, have 3 times more, Uber, Hertz, and the people want to have the vehicles and want to take on the 50 billion, $100 billion spend to make all these vehicles. It doesn't have to be all Tesla, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's something else that opens up the door for people to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there are definitely a lot of unknowns in this one, but I really think you got some great points with we have to get to 1 million robotaxis to kind of get to the Uber deal, and
Yeah,
just to break even, they have to build 200 to 300,000
yeah,
robotaxis, and it's a big investment, and they have to get their lidar people running and all the other sensors as you talked about. So
yeah,
yeah, a lot of scale and a lot of bumps along the way to get to 2 million robotaxis, and it seems so much easier for Tesla
yeah.
because they already have the car ready.
Yeah, and the fact that they're already pretty much profitable with their own autopilot FSD. So the fact that they're already making the money, that they
Yeah,
can say, okay, I can make more money by making it better. More people use it, more people buy it. So they, having it profitable every step of the way versus I got to put in $10 billion and I don't see any money out of it. I'm just losing it. I'm just dumping
yeah,
it in because I will not fail. I will get $10 billion into it and lose it. But even Google is, they got other investors into Waymo, and their other bets. There's one of their $6 billion investors in Google is saying, we want you to cut back on this Waymo thing. We want you to cut back on the other bets. Because they're thinking, so they're in this harsh climate, that's squeezing. So it's like you can't have the assumption that Google has infinite pockets to drive Waymo down the finish, because they already brought in other partners and they're being restricted on that. And then does China have also infinite money to go against that? People say they do, but there's limitations.
yeah,
So, and especially if you're not making money doing it, like
yeah,
the even if I can't dump $100 billion and flush it every year, do I want to do that? Why am
yeah,
I, at a certain point, it's kind of like even a country would say, I can't dump that much money into something that's not working.
yeah,
It's you start, debasing your currency, like bad things start happening if you just keep doing it. And it's like, it's you can be in the game without doing that stuff. Like if you have, um, just Tesla robotaxis roaming around, if you've made all of transportation cheaper and safer, you have economic benefits that way. And they're making their cars in your country. And so it's not like it's a complete, and also like for like Apple, they haven't said, okay, we must kill Apple. They have more strong competitors against Apple than they do there, but they still like, we still want your Foxconn business. We still want to build this stuff for you. So the idea that China says we must own every company, is the only way, is like not proven again by the history.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, definitely some exciting times ahead here, and
Yeah.
hopefully we're gonna be much more knowledgeable in a couple of years, but we'll see where this is heading. But Brian, thank you so much for taking the time to share your knowledge with me
Yeah. Thank you,
from
Lars.
your own video. If you guys haven't checked that one out, you should definitely do so. I will leave a link down below to Brian's own video on this topic that I saw, and that's why I, I knew you were talking about this. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for being on the show, Brian.
Thank you, Lars. Great to talk to you. Do
Yeah,
it
see you
again.
later.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Bye.